and welcome once again to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And Monday night, you know what time it is. Time for new comics, bitches! It's the bat signal, and you cannot escape from it. Although you can this week because there are no bat books out there. But hey, that's all going to change this Wednesday when the finales of Death of the Family are coming out. But let's not waste time talking about that and what could potentially happen there. Let's talk about this week's books, because there's a lot of them. It's usually the, Marvel usually gets the lion's share, mostly because I get the download codes, so I don't have to buy a lot of this stuff. But there's definitely some stuff that I did pick up regardless, because it was just that good. So we're going to jump right in because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 books to cover. So strap in. This is going to be a long one. Oh boy. Okay, so we're going to start first with another #1 title for Marvel now, and it is Fearless Defenders #1. Now, this, of course, being one of the kind of quote-unquote big deal books out there, because the whole basis of this book is that it is an all-female team. It is about female heroes and not male and female heroes or just male heroes. This is all chick all the time. So, and it's by Cullen Bunn, who is a very hit-or-miss writer, as you know that I very, very vehemently believe. I don't read The Sixth Gun. I'm not very interested in it, but I hear that that's great, but his Marvel stuff I have not been terribly thrilled with. And artist Will Sliney, who needs to get a better pen name because it's kind of an embarrassing name. But anyway, so when we have in this first issue, we begin with this kind of portent, this omen of doom and death, as Valkyrie stands on this kind of plateau, and it's raining, and it starts raining blood. But then we are whooshed away from there, and we are immediately amidst a kind of pirate ship, if you will, where Misty Knight is playing Super Ninja Badass with all the people on board, because she's been hired to retrieve a certain relic that is being stolen by these guys, and kind of pulling a bit of Indiana Jones stuff, but fortunately, she has the benefit of, as opposed to just a whip and a revolver, she's got the Satan Claw. Okay, and of course, she's also cybernetically enhanced, so she's got that going for her. So we have Misty just going all ninja on these guys' asses and just busting them up left and right. But here comes this helicopter that is looking to protect this shipment, or if, failing that, then to sink it, which is exactly what they do. And these mysterious people that are behind all this, they seem to have something planned. Whatever that plan is, we don't know yet, but I'm sure that we will find out. Now that we get back to Misty's client and friend, which is Dr. Annabelle Riggs. And she is, after, she's wanted this relic, and has Misty on commission to do some of the more Indiana Jones-ish dirty work for her. And and she starts kind of messing around with this relic and find that it's kind of a music box. It's this little statue, but it starts to emit this strange music. And of course, they're at this dig site where Riggs has been working for a while. And rising from the site are all these dead Vikings. And of course, Misty is the first combatant on the scene, but lo and behold, here comes Brunhilde, aka Valkyrie. And she is there ready to lay the smack down on these skeletal remains. And they both do, and basically what we know by the script that's on the page is that this is that the language that this music box, the song that's being put out, is Asgardian. So that, this is supposed to be this whole site, this whole dig site, is kind of a repository for fallen combatants of the Norse era, whatever you want to call that. And of course, it's this thing that's bringing these things back to life, and there are more portents of dread ahead, even as Misty and Valkyrie clean everything up. Because these Vikings are apparently the reason, the whole thing is that, it is the Valkyrie's job to escort the dead, the honored dead the honored dead warriors to Valhalla. But the reason that these guys, these skeletal remains, are still, on terra firma is that these are like the worst of the worst. These are the murderers, the thieves, the whatever, the pillagers. These are the bad guys. These are the guys that do not get a trip to Valhalla. And this song that she's hearing also, again, holds this portent of, a greater threat to come. As it's, as she says, this song is talking about these things rising, this evil rising, and that it's Valkyrie's fault. And that's pretty much where it ends. Now, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Cullen Bunn. I was very apprehensive when I took a look at this issue, but I'm actually really glad that I did, because it actually turns out really, really well. This is a really solid first issue, first adventure for these guys. It's pretty damned impressive for a first impression, I must say that. Will Sliney does a really nice job on art here. It's not too cartoony, it's not too sketchy. It settles in a good balance. The pace is kept up really well. We have some really nice action beats. And the mystery of a first issue is always, well, how is it going to seem, how is it going to go, and what is going to be brought forth from it. And they do give some nice hints as to where this is potentially going. And Misty and Valkyrie do have a pretty good kind of pseudo buddy cop chemistry going on there, because you have, the kind of old-timey Asgardian with the, kind of Foxy Brown of the Marvel Universe, if you will. She's an ass kicker, and she's glad to be it. And then you have this new character, this Annabelle Riggs, who is also, she likes girls. She actually plants a big smooch on Valkyrie when she kind of first arrives and kind of saves Annabelle, because this is, she's been studying kind of Nordic mythology her whole life, and, she's actually met one of the beautiful shield maidens of Asgard, and so she has to kiss her. So it's just, that was a really nice moment. I thought it was a nice beat for the book there. And it was interesting how Valkyrie actually says, well, there'll be time for that later. Suggesting that maybe, does Valkyrie hold an affinity for both guys and gals as well? Is her sexuality not predicated on being, just, because obviously we've seen her getting it on with Venom in Secret Avengers, but now here we are with this, and she didn't seem to be kind of too put off by it. So what that means, I don't know, but hey, it's nice to have an all-female book out there, where we're focusing on the female heroes, and this was a really fun, rousing first issue. So I have to give it a 4 out of 5. I mean, this was really good stuff from Cullen Bunn and from Will Sliney. I just like saying that name, Sliney. So anyway, moving on. So we have All New X-Men number 7. And basically what we have here, it opens with, our young Cyclops going into a bank to open his older self's safe deposit box. And he meets this woman out there who is apparently a big mutant fan and wishes that she was one of the New Mutants. And of course, Scott, being the young Scott, says there's always something special and about somebody. So just because you're not a mutant doesn't mean that you're not special. And of course, this is a nice sentiment. And as he's kind of going through the stuff, also, it's also kind of a commonplace thing that, it's a commonly known fact that Cyclops is a bad guy now. And so, here come, not the police, but the bank guards. And to intervene on Scott's behalf, because one of the things that Scott actually gets out of the case is a pair of ruby quartz lenses, kind of the 80s ruby quartz glasses, like the big, boxy, thick ones that were popular in the 80s. I had a pair. I did. True story. Because I'm a Cyclops guy. So, but what this issue is because it's really about is that he gets kind of saved, sort of, through the intervention of Wolverine, who comes to stop the bank guards from opening fire, and he shows his Avengers ID and everything like that, and says this is me telling you guys to back off, and if you don't back off and actually listen to this is Captain America saying that you have to back off, and if you don't, I'm just basically going to leave you without hands. Of course, they smartly do back off. But as it turns out, this is not Wolverine at all. This is Raven Darkholme. Yes, Mystique is whispering, she is pouring honey into kind of a mix of honey and bile into the young Cyclops' ear, because, of course, she wants him to turn to the dark side, essentially. But she makes a very strong case for, Scott, being good again, but also, she also lays the groundwork for what she wants him to see, what she wants Cyclops to see when she's at the X-Mansion, and is that, of course, not true, but that Logan is using the school to create, like, a bunch of mutant assassins, basically. So basically, we have this, kind of the first, as Raven herself puts it, she's kind of dropping a time bomb in the midst of the X-Men and just going to stand back and wait until it goes off. Of course, Wolverine does eventually show up, but also, in the meantime, back at the X-Mansion, Kitty Pryde is putting the little X-Men through some training, because they really don't know how to fight yet. Because you know, especially Iceman, because Iceman throws a lot of snowballs. That's what he knows how to do. So she wants to teach them to try and rely on things without their powers. And of course, she just totally lays the smackdown on Bobby, the young Bobby. And but of course, this is, when it's just kind of getting to the lighthearted part, we get, here comes Cyclops back, transported by the real Wolverine this time. And he walks up to Jean and hands her an envelope which holds their wedding invitation. And it's this incredibly powerful, emotional ending for this book as he just walks away in silence. So, I mean, basically, he's gotten kind of a crash course in his future, and he knows that he and Jeannie were destined to be together, but also that he's destined to lose her. And there's this great reaction shot that David Marquez, who's doing the art here again, has of Jean after she gets this. It's just kind of this teary-eyed look as she kind of looks back at Scott as he just walks away from her. And it's just one of those kind of really kind of heartbreaking moments that someone like Bendis can do really, really well. And I gotta say, I mean, All New X-Men, like I've said any number of times, is definitely the best of the Marvel Now books out there. If you're not getting it, get on board as soon as you can, get the trades, because like I said, this is a really smart, really well-drawn series. It's just, there's some really good emotional storytelling going on here throughout the whole series so far. And it's just, Bendis does know when, it's like when he really wants to do something good, he does it. And this is one of those things where it's really good. And there are a lot of Bendis books this week that I have to talk about. So this was absolutely 4.5 out of 5. Marquez just, again, doing an excellent job on art. I'm so glad that, through reading Ultimate Spider-Man, that I found him. And it really, really, his art style, I think, is even better than Stuart Immonen was doing. So, I mean, that's a hard act to follow, but he does it, and I think actually makes it better. So, again, 4.5 out of 5, very solid for X-Men, All New X-Men number 7. It just felt, again, a little short, but it's actually a pretty dense book. There's a lot of, dialogue involving Cyclops and Mystique. So, but just watching her kind of machinations going on, it's really very interesting. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out for Cyclops throughout this book. So, moving along to more Bendis, we have Daredevil End of Days. Of course, this is Bendis and David Mack, plus Klaus Janson and Bill Sienkiewicz on art. No Mack art this time. Doesn't get to do like his splash page thing, but Sienkiewicz does. And of course, it's gorgeous. But, we have Ben Urich, he's having a sit down with the imprisoned Frank Castle, again, to try to piece together the mystery of this word Mapone. What does it mean? How does it affect Bullseye? And to hear, of course, when he does sit down with Frank Castle, and Frank is in like this almost kind of, not kind of Hannibal Lecter type of chair, but he's really strapped in. They're not letting this guy free because, he gets out, he's going to be offing criminals left and right, or prisoners left and right. But apparently Frank does know what Mapone is, but he won't tell Ben. And what's so very interesting about Frank's portion of this story, because it does involve, there are two stories, oh, two and a half really, that are being told, different character stories, because you have Frank's story, his point of view, and then you have Melvin Potter eventually comes in, of course, the Gladiator comes in and tells kind of his story of his dealings with Daredevil and, you know, the costume shop and everything like that. And then you have kind of the finale with Bushwhacker and another villain, and I can't remember his name, but it's one of the villains from the Innocenti John Romita Jr. era that I started to kind of really fall in love with Daredevil during. But basically, the Castle lays it out. He knows Matt Murdock is a lawyer, and you know, and as he tells the story, you know, a lawyer never goes into court unprepared. He never asks a question he doesn't already know the answer to, and he also knows that Matt a bit of an ego on him, but that if you know this word, whatever it means to Bullseye, it means something very specific, and it's kind of. And as he says, you know, it's a word that he, you know, as Castle says, this is the type of word that can only be used once. It was basically kind of Daredevil's bullet against Bullseye, even though it came at the end of Matt Murdock's life. And they start talking about that there is, you know, the potential for Matt Murdock maybe having passed on the mantle of Daredevil to somebody else, to somebody younger. And then as we get to Melvin Potter, we see, again, more of his point of view on how, you know, he's in the, you know, superhero costume making business because everybody's doing that now, everybody's wearing, you know, so it's kind of a commentary on the cosplay, you know, culture that exists, but how he's refusing to make a Daredevil one, even though it's the most demanded one. Because he doesn't want to be that ghoul. He doesn't want to be that guy that does that. Because he's recovered from his role as Gladiator, as an upstanding citizen again. Although, even though he says that he hasn't made any Daredevil costume, he says that he's lied. And he has made one. And he made it for Matt Murdock just before he died. And said, but it wasn't really seemed to be made for Matt Murdock to wear. It seemed to be a little bit smaller. And that's where you start to see what Frank is telling and what Melvin is telling start to come together. There is, you know, as we've seen, obviously, throughout the entire run of this series, we've seen this Daredevil character following Ben Urich around. And how will that come into play? And then we get a bit where Ben goes to see Foggy. And Foggy is, you know, he's in a huge law firm right now, you know, big, and doing so much better than he ever was with Matt. Of course, you know, the kind of clientele that he's taking in now is a lot different than, you know, what used to be with the Nelson and Murdoch law firm, but, you know, so he's a lot more wealthy now, it would seem. And what Ben is also trying to do, he's trying to reach out to Peter Parker. Now, I don't know exactly how Ben Urich knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, or if he even knows that he's Spider-Man, but one would assume that he would have to know at this point in time. Because he does reach out and asks for Peter's help, although Peter does, you know, it goes to his voicemail, and Peter does get back to him and says, well, I can't help. There's nothing I can do. And then we have this moment in which Ben does go visit another villain of that era, of the Nocenti J.R. Jr. era, I believe, called Bushmaster, which is basically, he's the guy that can kind of grow guns from his arms and stuff like that. And he's in a hospital. He's all doped up. He's severely injured. Whether or not he's dying, I don't know. But then here comes this big hulking mass of a dude to start pounding the shit out of Bushmaster. In the midst of all this, we learn that Frank Castle has escaped prison because of something that has to do with Uric coming to see him. It was the sort of, he used that for as a mask or some kind of inciting incident for his escape. But and again, this big dude just thrashing around, wailing on Bushmaster, he knocks Ben out of probably a 20 odd, 30 odd foot or 30 odd story drop. And Ben believes absolutely he's falling to his death. Certain memories come through his mind of when he felt this way. First, to when Elektra stabbed him. Second, when he saw his wife during the being hung, strangled in the Born Again storyline, and now this, and he's convinced that his heart has stopped, that he's no longer breathing, he's just falling, and then here comes Daredevil. Yeah, but what? It was just, okay, the mystery, I mean, it is just heart-pounding now. What is going to happen next? Who are we going to visit next? What is going, are we going to find out the secret of this Daredevil? Is it really Matt Murdock? No, it can't be, because he's dead. So who is it? Who is this new Daredevil? What does Mapone really mean? What is its significance? Is it just a rosebud type of thing, or does it have a more significant meaning? I don't think that Bendis and Mack are dumb enough to kind of let it just kind of be kind of this insignificant thing. I mean, it has meaning, and I am confident once they do, once we do get to the finale, or before the finale, we will get answers, and it won't be just some kind of throwaway thing. This will be something that is of significance to both Daredevil and Bullseye. But, the book, gritty as hell throughout the whole thing. Jansen and Sienkiewicz, doing their stuff, making it all seem just scratchy and just grimy and gritty as hell. And it looks fantastic for a Daredevil book of this type. Wouldn't work with Mark Waid's Daredevil, but works absolutely very well here. And Bendis and Mack just do a fantastic job of really packing this issue with a lot of exposition, admittedly, but with a lot of really interesting insight, with helping to expand the mystery even further. Just when you're thinking one thing, it turns out there might be something else, and it's just really, really solid stuff. This was a really terrific issue. There were a few parts I felt a bit lost, so I kind of took some pointage off there, but this is a very solid 4.5 out of 5. Almost cracked my book, one of my picks of the week this week. And here's another book that almost cracked it. But we're moving away from Bendis now for a bit. And we are going to New Avengers number 3, which I have titled Infinity Crisis. So for those of you who do go to the comic book sites, CBR, go to Newsarama, iFanboy, whatever, or Bleeding Cool especially pointed this out very succinctly and very well. But let's go through it from a beat by beat standpoint. So we have Hank McCoy. He gets a little gift wrap memory that Charles Xavier implanted in him while, of course, he was still alive, and it basically gives Hank the ability to get the Mind Gem. So here we are going to have Hank as Cap and Black Bolt and Lockjaw appear, transport into the X-Mansion to see Hank just as he's gotten the Mind Gem out. They are bringing him back to Wakanda, so they can deal with this, with this world, this Earth collision crisis, that this this interdimensional, parallel dimension Earths colliding, so on and so forth. And of course, the inciting incident here is that this whole Earth thing has forced them to. They're going to rebuild. They're going to reconstruct the Infinity Gauntlet, which, of course, as we know, a device of great, almost all-consuming power and possibly even, corrupting influence. Now, I have not read the Infinity Gauntlet trade. I need to pick it up still. Save your breath. I'm going to get it at some point in time. Just not right now. But what we have here is that once they've constructed, they feel, okay, this is going to be the thing that works. And Cap has devised a strategy in which they can go to this, to this other plane of existence, to this other parallel universe, and stop the Earth from colliding, which, again, will help to stave off the chain reaction that will eventually hit our Earth. And the person who ends up using it is Cap. But whatever the Infinity Gauntlet needs to keep it powered and keep it working, Cap doesn't have it. And the gauntlet shatters. The gems explode. What the fuck? And we're just like, holy shit. And we don't know whether or not the character of Black Swan, who gets treated as some French fries in this issue, and also gives some more, vaguely menacing, information about what's going on. Of course, Namor's all pissed off at Cap, saying, "You killed us, you son of a bitch," and he's punching the crap out of Cap, and of course, here's everybody pulling everybody off, and they go whoosh, back to 616. Once they get back, Cap just knows how this is going to play out, because who do you have in this room? You have rulers. You have big brains, you have big tech. You have Reed Richards, you have Tony Stark, you have T'Challa, you have Black Bolt, you have Namor, you have Hank McCoy. And eventually, and Doctor Strange, don't forget Doctor Strange. They will, as we saw at the end of last issue, they already have a plan. If destroying another Earth is going to save this one, how, can we be prepared for that as heroes? And Cap just knows this is the way it's going to go. He knows these people too well. He knows that, Tony being a futurist, he knows that, Namor being an arrogant asshole, he knows that, this is the Illuminati here that we're dealing with. And he knows that these people will find a pragmatic solution that involves destroying another Earth to stop this eventual chain reaction. And Cap is not on board with that. He wants no truck with this. He just says, you know what? I know what you guys are going to do. Please, please don't do it. And of course, everybody is kind of giving their reasoning. Even T'Challa says, yes, I'm going to do the right thing, but I'm not me. I am a country. And I have my own people to protect. And, Namor, of course, whatever. And Reed, of course, easily kind of the most compassionate one of the Illuminati, with certainly with the lack of Xavier being there, and maybe other Hank being the other one, is he is of course making his case to Cap that yes, this probably will be our solution, and don't think that I haven't thought about this, that I don't know what I'm going to sacrifice. This another part of my humanity, part of my humanity will be erased if I have to do this, but this is just the way that it's looking right now. And here comes the familiar part. So once Cap says, you know what, I will not allow this to happen, Doctor Strange gets the signal from Tony, and zip, it's mind wipe time. So obviously this has almost too specific parallels to Identity Crisis, in which Batman, of course, objecting to the way that they're going to kind of lobotomize Dr. Light after the rape of Sue Dibney. He won't let it happen, and Tigroff. They wipe out 10 minutes of Batman's mind. And of course, they do almost the exact same thing to Captain America. Now, if you go to Bleeding Cool, you'll probably find this article in there. It's not really an article, it's just kind of a blurb, if you will, how Captain America and Batman have had very parallel existences over the last decade. The death, the rebirth, the sidekick who took their place, and so on and so forth. And now we have the Infinity Gauntlet mind wipe and the Identity Crisis mind wipe. So hence Infinity Crisis. But aside from that, Hickman and Steve Epting do a really, really, really damn good book here by blending, basically, Hickman's obvious strong point, that of science, with this hard-hitting emotional standpoint, is that the good guys know what needs to be done, but it's at odds with everything that they are. So how does one make peace with that? How does one allow themselves to go down this road? And that's what this book, what this specific issue is really all about. So by hitting these really strong emotional beats, by hitting on the big ideas, the big science that Hickman loves to put in, this book lands very firmly on its feet and plants an almost perfect 10. This is a 4.5 out of 5. This is a great issue. Because I again, this close to being a pick of the week, but because of that similarity that I just can't remove from my brain, it does. I had to take that kind of half point off. So anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Superior Spider-Man #3, because I know that none of you are reading it, so I'm reading it for you. Or at least not none of you, but a lot of you, the people that I watch on a pretty regular basis. I apologize. This whole week's been kind of crazy. I didn't even get to read a lot of my issues until Saturday night, so I haven't watched a lot of your vlogs because I didn't want to get anything kind of spoiled for me. But I promise that I will catch up on watching you guys. So, I don't know where I was going with. Oh yeah. Anyway, but Superior Spider-Man #3. So we have this Batman riff opening where Jameson has installed a spider signal on top of on top of City Hall, and he believes that he has Spider-Man at his beck and call. Whenever he needs him, he can just throw the switch, turn the signal on, and that will get him there. And what does Octo Spidey do? swings right in, smashes the hell out of the spider signal, because he believes that this is an obvious test. That if they, if Spider-Man's enemies were to know exactly where Spider-Man would be when that signal is turned on, then that would rain all sorts of hell down on where that location is. So that's, the first kind of worm that turns in this thing. But again, Jonah feeling a little bit fucked with, but also, kind of saying, yeah, it was a test. But of course, definitely not Jonah's intention there. He wants Spider-Man to be in his beck and call now, because he's getting behind what he's doing. He's getting behind who Spidey is now, because he's a little bit more ruthless. He's a little bit more violent. But we do have, of course, the kind of pseudo Jiminy Cricket of Peter Parker hovering over what Ock is doing. And so then, we have the eventual confrontation with Vulture. And how does a former partner of Adrian Toomes deal with Adrian Toomes? Because Ock does have some... Well, we get actually Peter kind of getting some moments of traveling down Ock's memory lane, if you will, because as Ock has access to all Peter's memories, it works both ways. So that Peter does have access to Ock's memories. He's kind of going through Ock's old memories of being Dr. Octopus and meeting with Vulture when they were both part of the Sinister Six. So his plan, Octospidey's plan for dealing with Toomes, is to give him access to one of Otto's old caches of money. And he's saying, just take it and you can disappear, and, we never have to fight again. It can be, you can just go away and you can live whatever kind of life you want, but just, you can get out of the city so that we don't have to fight. We don't have to come into conflict without, of course, revealing that he's really Otto Octavius. But the worm turns once again, as this plan for Ock goes not awry. It actually goes awry, not in his favor, but not to his detriment, but to Toomes' detriment, because as we see through Spidey's brain, or through Ock's brain, as Peter's traveling through that, he accesses another memory as Spidey is fighting, because Adrian's just not having any of this. He thinks it's all a trick, it's all BS, and so he sends his little minions after him. And of course, he bats around his little, what Ock believes to be dwarves, but are really children. Ock is using young children to do his dirty work, and at that point is where we see Peter accessing this memory of young Otto being beaten by his father. And that turns everything around on a dime, and Octospidey is out for blood. He is absolutely 100% ready to kill Adrian Toomes. And he grabs him, and of course, he's been working on all this different tech and all this, and so on and so forth. Doing stuff with his eyelets, whatever we call them, and tuning them, and adding all this special stuff to it. Again, proving that he is a superior Spider-Man, but the only reason that he's superior is that, while being more of a tech guy, he's superior in the way that he does things strategically about his villains, because it's kind of the only, it's one of these things that he thinks about it. He doesn't really have another life outside of this like Peter Parker has always had. So there's nothing to distract Otto from his work, which is why he sees himself as being the superior Spider-Man. And basically what we have is this final moment where it seems like, yes, indeed, Otto is about to cross the line here, but we have Carly, of course, who appears on the roof because he does send Adrian right down again into the already kind of smashed spider signal. And Carly really starting to put the pieces together. And Peter is just saying, oh God, no. I pray, Carly, that you do not put this together because you are going to be in life-threatening danger. Questions about this book. Because at one point, because there are small things that we're seeing, small moments or even kind of big moments, as with the end of the first issue, is that we have kind of Spirit Peter stopping Ock from delivering the killing blow to one of the members of the Sinister Six he was fighting. And then we have a moment in which Peter is talking, and it seems like Otto hears him. You know, he says something to the effect, what did you say? But nobody's actually speaking. Because even though Carly is there in the background, she's not talking to him. So is Peter somehow kind of Patrick Swayze ghosting his way more into Otto's brain? Obviously, as we see, we have this access to parts of his brain. And we have, like I said, that stoppage in the first issue. So he kind of seems to be able to exert some physical influence, but he also seems to be also starting to maybe exert some mental influence as well. So will we have kind of a Firestorm Spidey here? You know, will we have a Ronnie Raymond plus Professor Stein in the background here as they merge, as they become closer, or is it something different? Are we getting something else? Is Peter just kind of the person that we as the audience are kind of taking the ride along with, or is there a greater purpose to him being there? I'm thinking more the latter, but because I refuse to believe that Slott is that kind of dumb, because obviously he's written Spidey for a long time now, for many, not so much a long time, but for a lot of issues. I mean, the dude's written a lot of Spider-Man, and just being on this one character, we've seen him be awesome, we've seen him be great, we've seen him be really smart, and we have kind of seen him start to slip, but then, kind of get it right back, and then and that's kind of what this issue is for me, is that, first of all, Ryan Stegman's art, again, absolutely just loving it. Looks great, just, very dynamic, little scratchy, but it works. And then we have these moments, and I'm kind of hoping that we don't get, like, any Humberto Ramos too soon, or Giuseppe Camuncoli. I'd like Stefano Caselli to come back, or Marcos Martin would be really nice, but he's apparently doing the creator-owned thing for right now. So anyway, the thing about this book, and here's, I think, what it's going to continue to do, because I wasn't a huge fan of the last issue, even though I gave it a positive review. But I give this one a 4 out of 5 because Slott keeps taking the hook to me, and he keeps yanking me back in. It's like being a Cubs fan at this point in time. Really, it is. Because, you think it's going to kind of get bad, and then all of a sudden it's it's not so much that it's really good, but it's really absorbing. It does suck you in because you want to see how this progresses. I won't call it a bad accident because that would be that would infer that this is a really bad book, and it's not. It's not a bad book. It just has some weird choices to it, choices that I'm not completely a huge fan of. But now that they're there, we have to accept that they're there, and we have to go. And if you're not willing to go along for the ride, which a lot of you aren't, I understand that, but I am on board with where this book is going. Come hell or high water, but who knows? Hell might come first. So now on to the Independents. First book that I am going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about very long because it's not going to be something I'm going to be picking up again. And that is Red Team issue 1. Basically what we have here is a tale far too often told, full of lots of sound with very little fury. It's certainly not told by an idiot, but it just is a whole lot of nothing. It's funny because I read CBR's review of this issue. They gave it 1 star. I was a little bit more generous than that. Not much. Because basically what we have here is that we have it's an elite unit of NYPD cops. There's 4 of them. And basically there's a really, badass motherfucker, just, shitbag crook who's killed, a cop who just drops bodies like it's nothing, all in the name of doing his drug trade. And basically the whole book right now, the first issue at least anyway, is about how we meet one of these cops of this 4-person team, 3 men, 1 woman, and basically this guy seems to be in an interrogation room at the NYPD, and he is confessing to the murder of this drug dealer that the 4 of them planned an execution of this guy. That it was there was no self-defense, there was no justifiable homicide. This was not a clean shoot or a quote-unquote righteous kill. It was a flat-out murder. They blew this guy away and didn't really think twice about it. So this is a tale that's been told a lot over the years, especially since kind of the advent of, Training Day, and, the writer, I want to say his name is David Ayer. He's done a lot of those types of films, films like Harsh Times, films like Dark Blue. He just wrote another film that just came out called End of Watch, which I haven't seen yet, but that actually shows the police apparently in a good light. But, just this kind of, and even The Shield, even Sean Ryan's The Shield has this kind of feel to it. So, it's a story that I've seen before, a lot of ways done a lot better. Because, frankly, I didn't give a shit about any of these characters. It is horrifically talky. There's a lot of monologuing, and, it's just like, oh, just stop already. I get it, Garth. And he just really seemed to phone this one in. I have no interest in where this book is going. I gave it a 2 out of 5 because the ending I thought was pretty cool. But everything else, I'm just like, okay, well, this is literally, it's kind of like a Shield ripoff. Is kind of what it felt like to me. Although, as opposed to the Shield opening up with them killing a fellow cop, they are killing a criminal. So they're not showing them as bad guys, as villains, not even anti-heroes because they are villains, being the stars of the piece, but they are more of the anti-hero cloth because they've killed a really bad guy, but they've also broken the law by doing it. So again, 2 out of 5. The art by Craig Cermak is fine, but it's nothing to write home about. So 2 out of 5 for Red Team #1. Very disappointing because you know me, I love Garth Ennis, but this was very, very not good for Garth. It was just he's usually about a 4, as far as pretty much anything he does to me, is about a 4. Although his run on the Shadow recently, prior to Victor Gischler taking over, felt a little bit phoned in there as well in some parts. Didn't feel quite right. And here it's really like it's Ennis on autopilot all the way. So I don't like it when anybody does that. So if Brian K. Vaughan started to go on autopilot, I would say fuck it, it's not worth it. So anyway, moving on, Harbinger #0. So here we have the story of Toyo Harada. We get more insight into him. This whole issue is really about him and how he became what he is. Is that we see him, and this story is being told to him, or being told by him to this young man named Darpan, who is being exploited essentially by Harada's young Sayat, little boy, who is being brought in. His power is basically he's going into Syria, and he has the power to make anybody's worst fears, worst nightmares to be relived in excruciating living detail. We don't see exactly what he's using this kid for at first, but whatever it is, obviously to serve Harada's and Project Rising Spirit's interests, specifically his, kind of global conglomerate business. Because we do have also this big oil meeting that's taking place at the same time. But we see Harada's youth, just after the bomb, because he grew up in Hiroshima, and this was, after the bombing. And he is awakened from the atomic explosion as a Sayat, but he doesn't understand his powers. His mother obviously died, and we see kind of the irradiated wasteland that Hiroshima has become. And we see him starting to use his powers really to kind of take care of himself, but also to protect other people that are being kind of pissed on by the Japanese government. They're kind of hoarding food, and they're selling, just small balls of rice to eat, and he actually just uses his powers and just rips them apart, blows up their brains, whatever, and kind of grabs all of them for himself and is just kind of giving them away, giving all of the various rations away to people who need them. And more than anything, he just wants to know what happened to his father who was fighting in the Japanese Imperial Army at that time. And not that the young character is reflective of who Harada is, because we can definitely see that he's obviously been manipulated by Harada, but we can see that that the young person doesn't really know the full potential of his own power and doesn't really understand what he's doing with it because he is still a child. And again, this whole mission that he's sending this young boy on has to do with has to do with essentially kind of assassinating the president of Syria, but in a way that makes it look like, well, actually it has the people killing him because he's barricaded himself in this, fully, this full complement of military personnel surrounding him at all times. But just as soon as this kid walks through, they're killing themselves and so on and so forth because they have to escape the nightmares that this kid is making them relive. And of course, this secures him this big oil contract that would have been taken by the Russians and I think like the French or something like that. But we really are beginning to see his influence on a global scale, and how he's exerted that influence is through using his psiots. So what we really get here, despite it being a really compelling and very artfully done issue by Joshua Dysart and Maiko Suyan, it feels a little too manipulative by using the child, by telling the story about children. We're immediately, because they are children, we're meant to feel this immediate identification with them, and we do. But at the same time, it just feels a little bit too emotionally manipulative on Dysart's part. I think he just kind of outsmarted himself a little bit too much by trying to make us identify with, a child experiencing loss and pain, and being too innocent to know that what he's doing is wrong or is harmful. So, again, while being a really well-told book, I just think that end of things got a little bit too much for me. So I give it a 4 out of 5. It's still a really solid tale, and like I said, very artfully done, but just a little bit too manipulative from a storytelling standpoint. Jennifer Blood, number 22. Basically what we have here is that the trial of Jennifer Blood is basically being wrapped up. I thought this was going to be a much longer arc before the trial aspect of it wrapped up. But, here we have, basically we're near her final moments of freedom, really. Is that, because we have Pruitt, we have, and her, and her, drug dealer friend and his kind of army, and then we have Ray Buick and his ninjets, and Ray has the children, and then we have, this, the IAB, the Internal Affairs guy that's after Pruitt, and then we have this kind of crazed, drunken, redneck asshole that just, ignite this New Mexican standoff, because it takes place in New Mexico. See what I did there? And of course turns it into a complete and total powder keg. And what we have here is, the kind of Mike Ehrmantraut kind of character, goes to see Buick, and Buick is, kind of taking care of the children in his own strange and unusual way. We see the ninjets, we see the, all of the slicing and the dicing and the mashing and the smashing and the shooting and the blasting and the blood and the guts and the faces being hacked off and heads being sliced open, and just all the insane, bloodbath scenarios that we knew were going to happen. And of course, everything seems to keep turning absurd, as this comic is wont to do, but still we have Al Ewing and Cuber Ball very much, keeping this book rooted in, with a strong emotional core, not to mention all the bloodletting that's going on. Keeping Ennis's style, keeping his, rhythms, keeping what we would normally see from Garth Ennis. It's funny because, we have a Garth Ennis book that actually came out this week that kind of sucked. And then we have this book, which was created by Garth Ennis, but is now being run by Al Ewing, and it's even more Ennis than what Ennis is doing on this other book. Basically, we have, this kind of final confrontation moment between Jen and Ray Buick, and she sees her again. We start to get her insanity coming forth, the scenarios that she plays out in her head. She sees herself, she's just blasted the kind of Ermintroutish character, just blown his head off. And, the kids just freak out. They're like, we do not want to go with you. We don't want to be anywhere near you. You killed our dad. You're a horrible mommy. We don't want anything to do with you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. And then we see her blowing away Buick. We see her taking the children and going on the run again, seeing if they can start off in another new place. But then we see, the boy, her son, of course, becoming maybe a little bit too much of a problem. We see her killing him. Then, the daughter, she might become a problem too for her and her freedom. We see her killing her daughter, and we see her driving off and blowing away cops, and just all of these, actions, and so horrifying. But then, of course, we snap back to reality, and we're like, oh, thank God. Okay, this was all just her imagining her steps down the road where she sees herself going, which is when she decides to let Ray Buick go and let her children essentially be away from her. And, of course, in the midst of this issue, we do flash back periodically to the trial in which Jennifer is found guilty, because how the fuck could she not be? And since this now, the only problem that I have with this issue is that it ends on this note of where it would have ended if she had kind of gone through all of these nightmare scenarios that she was thinking about in her head, is where she just ends up putting a gun to her head, and then, the page just blacks out, and then you just have the blam sound effect. But we know that that's not going to happen, because, we've seen the future, and the future is she's obviously alive. This trial is going on, and we have this bit of this kind of fake cliffhanger suspense moment, and that's where unfortunately the book kind of pulled me out, because it had me going full steam ahead. I was loving this issue again, but that final moment just ripped me right out of the page, because I know that she's not really killing herself here, that whatever's going on, this is just kind of I felt like Ewing just didn't know quite how to end this issue, because we know that in the next issue she's actually going to be in prison, and we'll get some kind of wrap-up with maybe the children, find out what's happened to them. But, we'll have Jennifer Blood in prison, which, again, is kind of like having the Punisher in prison. And, it's going to be potentially a really good time for her. But she's, Jennifer Blute, she's never been out to kill just random criminals. She's always been, it first started out as a mission of revenge, and then it's just spiraled out of control from there. And this is why this book is so good, is because it took that original idea and expanded on it in this kind of crazed way, this way that we would probably view a vigilante like this, that they would just be a just be a total psychopath. Not like a Frank Castle character who is fully in control. I know I keep going back to that, and so I'm going to stop and just say this book was a 4.5 out of 5. I had to take off a half point for that ending because I wanted that to work, but it didn't. I wanted the whole book to work, but it just didn't. So on to DC, and we're going to start with a new book for me, essentially a new book for me, because I read the first issue and said, this is shit, I'm never reading it again, but now I have to, because we have Jeff Lemire writing, we have Andrea Sorrentino doing the art. I'm talking, of course, about Green Arrow number 17. Now, basically what we have here is whatever has gone on in the past is the past, because we have, as soon, because Oliver, he has this branch of his business, the Queen Industries Consolidated, whatever they want to call it, called Q Corps, that he has kind of his buddies at who have been helping him make weapons and run missions for him, and we have this character named Emerson that's kind of running the day-to-day business, but the business has been apparently Queen Industries has been bought out. It's been taken over, hostile takeover by this other company, and of course, they refer to this ordeal on the island. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, this is starting to sound a little bit familiar for Oliver Queen. Because, as most of you know, there is a television show on the air right now being broadcast on the CW called Arrow. And it is basically Green Arrow Begins. If you're watching it, if you're a fan of it, like I am, I'm not a huge fan. It is kind of a show that I have kind of a love-hate relationship with, because I do enjoy superheroes. I do enjoy the superheroes on the CW. I do enjoy the Easter eggs, but I do not enjoy some of the areas, the very soap opera-y places that it goes to. It's definitely much darker than a show like Smallville, but this book seems to be kind of taking some of that information from that title and adding it on to this book, which is why Lemire is taking it over. And immediately, within just the first couple of pages, we have Ollie's whole world torn asunder. We have, his friends in Q Corps. The fucking building blows up. I mean, not the whole building, but most of the building, and just the place where Q Corps is, it just explodes. And this, this guy Emerson, this almost kind of pseudo father figure to him, maybe, is killed by this other archer. And I'm thinking, is this Merlin? Are we finally getting Merlin in this book? So basically what Jeff Lemire is starting out doing right away is he's giving this book a tabula rasa. It is just, he is leveling the playing field, and he is making it a whole new book, going in a whole new direction, I'm assuming. Because we have this archer against archer fight by this guy, Komodo. And, we see Ollie now totally on his own. There's no backup. There's nobody waiting for him. It's just him and his gear against this superior archer. And what does this mean? Who is this guy? Well, it's not Merlin. It's this guy who calls himself Komodo. Now, as they have their kind of archery duel, we see that this guy is absolutely ready to just put a knock right through right through Ollie's head, but at the last moment he is saved by this man called the Magus, or Magus, however it's pronounced. I think it's Magus. And he is telling Oliver about, that there's something wrong with his destiny with where he is right now, that he should not be here, that he should have never left the island. And not only does that make me think of Green Arrow, the TV show, but it also makes me think of Lost. So for those of you who have watched Lost, praise be to you, because you're obviously smart people. Because any show that can boast Brian K. Vaughan as a writer of at least one of its episodes, you should know is probably a pretty fucking good show. And so just that whole idea of we should never have left the island, you know, Kate, we should have never left the island. We need to go back. You know, that whole great reveal, I think, at the end of season 3, where we were actually seeing flash forwards and Lost. Anyway, I'm not going to get too much into Lost, but that, while reminding me of Lost, also it brings back the idea of, well, is this trying to tie in more to the TV shows so that the book itself can get... because there is an Arrow comic that is, it's digital only right now. I mean, it's in print, you know, when they come out with like 4 chapters, they'll put it out in print. But are they trying to get more readers to come on to Green Arrow by having it shift a little bit more towards the ideas that are being presented in the TV show? This is all kind of secondary because, like I said, right out of the gate, Lemire shows that, yes, this book is all new. We're wiping the slate clean. We are going from where he wants to take it from. He no assistance, really, you know, all of the supporting characters, I'm assuming, are pretty much dead, gone, out of the picture. And he is on his own, himself, his archery skills. But is he going back to the island? I don't know. But, you know, more importantly, the audience doesn't know either. So, obviously, the highlight of this book, though, despite what Lemire does, because we do have some really nice writing beats, but again, I'm not familiar enough with this book, and because of the echoes to these other forms of media, that has me a little distracted, had me a little distracted throughout this book. So, what I obviously took away most from the book is the art. Because here we have Andrea Sorrentino making a really big noise here with coming to Green Arrow. But there is a bit of a problem. Now, I read the reviews on CBR. CBR gave it a really, really good review, better than I did, I think. And Newsarama gave it a terrible review, and I couldn't understand really why. But there is one part of Andrea Sorrentino's art that doesn't work quite so well, and that is the coloring. Because what we've seen so far from his artwork, at least from my point of view, is that he's had, his work on iVampire. The colorist has been Marcelo Maiolo, and he does his coloring scheme, his coloring design is fantastic. It works perfectly well for that book. This book, it's taking, we have obviously strong uses of green here, but at certain points in time, the way that he frames certain moments, the way that he, so artfully places things, because, the art is flawless, but the coloring is off, because he's doing it himself. And the one complaint, the one remark that I do kind of agree with from Newsarama's review was the art almost seems like it was done through, or the coloring almost seems like it was done through like MS Paint. It seems like, yeah, there were just areas that he just kind of filled in digitally, to make a big red and then just kind of, just completely remove color from certain panels and just place splotches of color here and there, splashes of green, essentially. And that didn't work so great for me because it starts out really moody with this, with Oliver kind of walking amidst what I'm assuming is the island, this kind of wasteland. The sun is just, beating down, and he's just, the coloring looks like it is out of iVampire, but Maiolo is going to be coloring, if not just the next issue, I think even more issues as this goes on. So that, obviously, a huge plus for this book, a huge point in the plus column. But Sorrentino's art is just masterful here. Like I said, except for the coloring doesn't work as well. It works in some places, but it feels unfinished more than anything. It doesn't feel like this is what was intended. It feels like this was kind of pumped out. Not from the artwork. The penciling, the inking is gorgeous, but coloring problems. So 4 out of 5 for Green Arrow 17. This is a book I never thought I would pick up again, but I'm going to be picking it up from here. So here's hoping that Jeff Lemire can do something really strong with this book. Now on to another book that I keep getting suckered into, but this time the suckering is good. And that is Phantom Stranger number 5. Yes, I'm still reading it, but this time Dan DiDio has a helping hand from the great J.M. DeMatteis, who obviously brings years of experience to this craft, and it's becoming a hard book to drop, especially when you have issues like this. Because who do we have in this issue? What do we have in this issue? We have the throwdown that arguably we have been waiting since the Mandrake Ostrander years to see the Phantom Stranger versus the Spectre. Now, obviously we have a different New 52 fashioned origin for the Spectre. We still have Jim Corrigan as a Spectre, not Christmas Allen or anybody else. We have Jim Corrigan, and he is the Spectre, and Phantom Stranger really has a bone to pick with him because he believes that Spectre is somehow behind the abduction, the removal of his family. So we have this, again, something I've been waiting to see for a really long time. That's, it's issues like this that make being a fan of certain books all worthwhile. Because I was a huge fan of the Mandrake, Ostrander Spectre. There were a couple of really heavy-handed issues there that felt like it was, trying to be a little bit too topical and kind of ripped from the headlines type of ideas. And those kind of issues I wasn't such a huge fan of, but for the most part, Ostrander's writing, Mandrake's art, awesome stuff. And here we have, DeMatteis. I don't know if he's ever worked with the Spectre before, but he seemed, both him and DiDio, and Brent Anderson, who does the artwork in this issue, it's good. Certainly not as good as what we had from Mandrake, but again, has this kind of very unfinished, kind of Neil Adams-y feel to it, which is good. And so, but in the midst of all this, we get another familiar face, or a familiar not face. See, which hero in the DC universe have we not seen yet in the New 52, and has no face? I can give you the answer, but the answer itself is a question. My main problem with this book because it does has this awesome moment of, it has these really, really strong character beats. My problem with this book is that we're still getting too embroiled in the character of Dr. 13. I don't give a shit about this guy. And it's hard to make me care about him. But, I mean, because I don't know if... I mean, because essentially he is our human observer. He represents the audience in this book, more or less. He is the sort of everyman for this book, if this book can, you know, deliver such a thing. But I don't like his character. I don't really care about what happens to him. But his knowledge of occultish things, of course, he is the exposition machine. And that's basically all Dr. 13 is to me right now, is he is a plot point. He is merely there to serve as a function. He's not a fleshed out character, other than he's kind of nonchalant. But, you know, we have characters like that already. You know, this book even talks about John Constantine, for Christ's sake. We already have kind of a character like that. So don't give us somebody new and have it be someone that we can't, you know, connect with at any point. And we have him meeting with the Question. We learn about the Question is that this does not appear to be the Vic Sage that we knew, and certainly not the Renee Montoya version of this character, but seemed to be somebody all new for the New 52, that he, like Pandora and the Phantom Stranger, are members of the Trinity of Sin. Now, I don't, you know, obviously we know that Phantom Stranger's real identity is Judas Iscariot. We do not, I mean, Pandora, if she is indeed the mythical Pandora, then we can understand that, but who then would the Question be? And it is questions like this that it's like, fuck, you've got me again. Now I have to figure out what the hell the Question means in this book. What is he doing there? What is his part to play in this mystery all about? But, you know, for no other reason, this book is worth picking up just for the fight between the Spectre and the Phantom Stranger, because you know the Spectre's always wanted a piece of the Phantom Stranger for a long, long time. And to finally see the two of them do battle is something quite intense. But like I said, DiDio and DeMatteis really do hit some really nice character moments for both of these characters, for the Spectre, for Phantom Stranger, and, you know, that the Phantom Stranger is ultimately a man who is going to be duplicitous. He is going to betray you, because that is his nature. But at the same time, you know, what we know, you know, Judas, of course, is at the center of Dante's hell, Dante's Inferno. He is in the ninth ring, he is in the center, and the reason he is there is that is the place for betrayers. And, you know, Judas Iscariot throughout history has been, you know, the Judas kiss, you know, it is, you know, he has been the villain, but it was Judas's fate to, you know, to deliver Jesus to the Romans so that he could die for our sins. So I'm liking the fact that they're kind of, you know, casting aside some of those religious aspersions, but keeping them at the same time, and seeing that he is kind of a complete human being, or that he can be once he, you know, but will he, one of the questions posed here is that would he even betray his family in order to get freedom from this life, from the tether of his 30 pieces of silver? So I have to say 4 out of 5 for this issue. Again, because there are some kind of clunky moments, And again, because of Doctor 13, I can't give this a higher rating, but this is worth it. And again, it's one of those things I feel like I'm going to jump back aboard. So now on to picks of the week, of which there are technically 4, but I count them as 3. I'm sure that you know what one of them is, so let's just start it off. But we won't talk about that one first. First, we are going to talk about Avengers number 5. Now, I might have given this one a 5 out of 5, not merely because this is a great issue of comics, but I think it might have gotten a bump up from being maybe just a 4.5 because it is so much better than issue 4. Because who we are introduced to here is the character of Isabel Dare, who is she's a kind of a, she's a stargazer, she's an astronomer who kind of bails on that duty to come back to kind of her farm life, to help with her father and her grandfather, who's ailing, he's very sick. And just decides to unburden herself of that type of life, but still she's looking at the stars all the time. But then one day the stars come to her in the form of this strange, malleable, almost alien device that essentially turns into a pair of goggles. She puts them on, boom! She is transformed into Smasher. And Smasher is her, the place of Smasher is to be amongst the sub-guardians of the Shire Empire. The persona of Smasher, who we do see in a different, more alien form originally, but almost like a Green Lantern, dies in battle, and the goggles, if you will, seek out, not seek out, but just kind of fall into Isabel's or Izzy's hands, and she suddenly finds herself completely free, much to her grandfather's great happiness. And because he does not like anything to be caged. And she sees her as a person who is caged, who is not wanting to be where she is. And all of a sudden, the entire universe is opened up to her, and adventures galore. So we get some mix between past, present, where we see Izzy starting to take on more of the role of the Smasher, and we see how she essentially becomes the first human to ever become a super guardian, basically a full-on member of the Shire Imperial Guard, like Gladiator, people like that, a super guardian. And we have these great moments of character. We have this incredibly emotional tale told. It's a lot of action and a lot of character and a lot of heart are in this issue, which is what makes this issue so goddamn good, is that Hickman really brings a very solid emotional core to this issue. And Adam Kubert, I don't know what was going on in the previous issue, but his artwork is so much better here. It looks fantastic here. So I don't know what was going on with him in the previous issue. Maybe it was just a rush job, something like that, but it just didn't work there. And this works So much better. I mean, it's just, there's a lot more emotion here than in just kind of more of the almost like kind of cold facts, expositionary, science-y stuff of Hickman's Tale of Hyperion. So to get introduced to a new character, and a really cool character at that, and to see kind of how she becomes an Avenger, is that near the end, and this is something that I actually had to look up on Wikipedia, mostly to satisfy my own curiosity, is that her grandfather is named Dan. Because I'm wondering, why does her grandfather have a card saying, Dan, if you ever need anything, reach me, and flips it over, and it's from Captain America with kind of the Avengers logo on it. And it's like, why would this old man Dan have something like this? And then all of a sudden, things clicked. Dan Dare. So now, I know who Dan Dare is. Dan Dare, more of a British kind of icon, more of a British icon of comics, adventuring, spacefarer, so on and so forth. He was in 2000 AD. Whether or not this is, but is owned by a completely different company, one would assume, or I don't know if this is like kind of fair use or what, but that, Isabel Dare does seem to be the granddaughter of Dan Dare. And that's just really cool. Because, basically, Cap says, hey, the old man would be proud. But again, there's more, there's more suspense, kind of laid out in the last page of things to come as to why the Imperial Guard and why Shire were under attack in the first place. Is that something is coming. Now, this would probably indicate that, because we have, kind of almost tying into also New Avengers this week, we have this emerging, we know that Thanos is coming back. So does this have something to do with him? Do we know? And that's, this is where it gets really interesting, because I am excited to see Thanos come back again. I forget who's doing that book. I don't think it's Hickman. I can't remember who it is, but it doesn't really matter, because this book was terrific. Great art, great, fantastic writing from Hickman. Again, 5 out of 5 all the way. And for our kind of runner-up pick of the week, we're back to Bendis, and it's back to business for Scarlet. Scarlet number 6. So excited that this book is back, because we have Scarlet Rue. She is back, and she is ready to tear it all down. Because we have, in this book, beginning of this issue, we have kind of a future glimpse, a glimpse of things to come, where Scarlet is actually sitting down with the mayor of Portland. Now, for those of you who have IFC and are fans of Portlandia, it's hard not to picture Kyle MacLachlan in this situation, but you get past that pretty quickly. But, to see, we have our, Scarlet, being the voice of the people who are just tired of being rough, just steamrolled over by a corrupt police department in Portland. And so we have, these moments where she's with the detective who was the partner of the uh, of the cop who killed her boyfriend. You know, the inciting incident. I keep coming back to that for this whole book, for the whole concept of this book, and we see Scarlet again playing kind of, you know, the young, strong woman revolutionary, and, you know, getting her voice out. We don't. It would have been nice to get something of a beginning of this issue that gave us, like, okay, well, here's you know, here's what's happened, you know, previously on type of thing, or previously in, you know, just to give it a little bit of a recap, because this book has been gone for a while. But, you know, you get back into the swing of things quickly enough, as we see, you know, she has some new people that she's working with, particularly the character of Isis, who is, you know, this young black woman who has another kind of tragic tale to tell about her own, you know, her own self, that she was affected similarly by corrupt cops who basically, she was just, as a little girl, she was out for a walk one day with her father, doing nothing, just enjoying the day, and he just gets grabbed by these cops, and they are certain that he is a suspect that they're looking for, even though, you know, he's been with his daughter all day. There's no possible way that he could have done what he's being accused of by these cops, and it's told in this interesting prose style as opposed to just, you know, word balloons or, you know, internal monologue or anything like that. And we see Alex Maleev's beautiful artwork, really selling this story in just these single splash pages of, you know, of this, you know, of the father being killed by these cops, you know, to be essentially branded, you know, this bad guy, and he's really not. He's really a good guy. He's a good, decent man who was cut down by the, you know, the corruption of the police department. And so, because even before the opening with the mayor's office, we do get, again, just these blacked out pages of just script, internal monologue from Scarlet, kind of saying, well, you know, here's what here's what you've been doing. You know, you've been occupying and stuff like that. How did that work out for you? Everything's still the same as it was when you started. You pitched your tents, you made a little noise, and people started talking, but nothing happened. Nothing changed. And this is what Scarlet is all about. She is about fuck the status quo. We need to crumble things in order to build them back up. So even she and her little kind of group of, you know, the other two people, I forget what the guy's name is, but her and Isis and this guy break into one of Portland's morning broadcasts. They're talking about muffins, and here comes Scarlet Brew introducing herself, saying, you know what, it's enough of this. You know, I promised myself, you know, when I woke up each morning, that the world wouldn't be exactly the same by the time I went to sleep. Now, of course, she's got the entirety of the police department and the FBI all wanting a piece of her, but they always seem to get there just shy of too late. And of course, we have you know, one of her friends on the roof kind of laying down this kind of suppressing fire from the rooftop, and of course, you know, Isis is holding the people inside the studio hostage as Scarlet tries to get her message out to the people. And that message is, you know, the last time we tried to assemble, it was broken up by the police. It was broken up violently. We're not looking to have that happen again. We are not going to let that happen again. We're going to be meeting here at this time, on this date. Come and listen, and come and be heard. And of course, you know, we have this last page where, you know, it's the second to last page where it's like, well, who the hell is going to go do that? And then, of course, you have this last page, and there are thousands of people with signs and, cheering Scarlet on. And she has become a hero of the common person. And she's become her own revolutionary, really. And, we, of course, touched back on things like, the murder of the corrupt cops that was broadcast on YouTube, and she fully admits to it, too. So, I mean, it's like, how does someone like this end up getting meetings with the mayor? And, how is it not under complete and total arrest? Well, that's what we're going to find out. And so, I mean, just everything about this book kept hitting the right notes. Nice balance, nice moments of humor that Bendis can always bring to something, and Malev's wonderful art, some great storytelling techniques. We don't have really any breaking the fourth wall in this issue, not really, except in kind of that first double page where it's just the the script again, the white script against just the blackness. Which, you can tell she's talking to us. And this is just, it's such a powerful, rousing book, and you're just like, you want it, like, yeah, all right, let's get out there. And of course, we're here sitting reading these comics, so that's what we're here for. Just real quick to touch on one book that I did miss, forgot to talk about. I meant to talk about after Superior Spider-Man, and that was Ultimate Spider-Man, because I want to finish off Bendis for the week. This was a 3.5 out of 5, and I'll tell you why. Because does a certain type of tragedy have to... I mean, first of all, okay, I shouldn't say because. I'll just start here. Does a certain type of tragedy... With great power comes great responsibility. But with that great responsibility and that great power, must there also come great tragedy? And that is the question that this book might very well be asking as Venom seeks out Jefferson Morales. Seeks out Miles' dad. And what the hell is going on there, man? I mean, of course, and this all has to do with Betty Brant's potential expose, her trying to get the goods on, believing that Miles' dad is in fact the new Spider-Man. And of course, here comes Miles. He's, because, dad is outside. Mom eventually is trying to make her way outside, but, here comes Venom to attack him, to attack Jefferson. And lo and behold, he is gravely injured. There was a nice little moment there where one of the cops that shows up to the scene calls in a code 616, which I thought was just kind of a neat little Easter egg there. But what we really have here is the problem with this book. Most everything is really good about it, but like issue, I want to say 10 or something, or issue 8 had, which was kind of the final confrontation between Miles and Uncle Aaron. That book had a very, very serious tone to it, and this, I think Bendis tries to get a little too cutesy with some of the internal monologue, with some of the dialogue moments, when this is a very serious book. I mean, there's some serious shit that goes down here. And, I get that Miles is still kind of playing around with his powers and doesn't know what to do. He's trying to think of how Peter Parker beat Venom, and it's not going to his liking. But it's like you would think that the stakes would be a lot higher emotionally for Miles in this book, considering that his father could be dying. But we still get some kind of cutesy, fun moments from Miles' internal monologue. He knows what's going on with his father. This is not, it's not like it's news to him. So I just think that Bendis got this wrong. But still, there are some really strong moments. Sarah Pichelli, again, doing an excellent job on art. So I had to give it a 3.5 out of 5 for Ultimate Spider-Man number 20. So anyway, moving on and moving to pick of the week. You know what it has to be by this point in time, and there's only one problem with it, and that is, but we're talking, of course, about Animal Man and Swamp Thing numbers 17. The finale, parts 1 and part 2, of course, Animal Man bleeding into Swamp Thing for the final 2 parts of Rot World. So what do we have here? We have finally the final confrontation between Buddy, Alec, and Anton Arcane. We have Avatar of the Red, Avatar of the Green, Avatar of the Rot. In Rot World, ready to do battle. They have their secret weapons. They have assembled their teams as best as they can. You've got Steel doing some really cool shit with with the deceased cyborg. Basically, just kind of feeding his own, body into that. But then Frankenstein gets an arm hacked off. Now it hurts, of course, somewhat, but it's all, necrotic tissue or whatever. But it's not controlled by the rot, obviously. And we have moments like Flash finally getting taken out by Animal Man, because of course Flash is just running around killing everybody. And we have Swampy and Batgirl facing off against Superman, Rotified, and Swamp Thing and Batgirl kind of coming to the conclusion that his powers are enhanced by Earth's yellow sun. So it would only stand to reason that the rot would work in the opposite way. The more sun, the weaker he will get. And that's how they take Superman down. The rot Superman. But then we have, moments like Nora Freeze, Rotified, while Victor Freeze is trying to fight on the side of right. We have Medphil being taken out by one of the flying demons around Rot World. And, of course, with the deceased Green Lantern of Sector 2814, it must find a new carrier. And who does it go to? Someone that has shown great courage. Frankenstein is a Green Lantern. And we have the Batbot, which of course is a bomb. And we have, Black Orchid, and we have, Steel doing his cool shit with Cyborg, but then Steel gets wasted. And it's like, oh my god, what the fuck is going on? And we have, all of these, again, these rotified heroes that are being, and villains being blasted by, the, biorestorative chemical coated bullets that this kind of squad of Robins are using. Both the issues are co-written by Lemire and Snyder, which works very well, which works very much to its advantage because it keeps a cohesive structure throughout the entire 2 parts of the finale. The only problem with this is that for Swamp Thing, I am not a huge fan of Andrew Belanger's artwork. It does take the book down because he's trying again to ape Yannick Paquette's style, but he can't because his art is too boxy, it's too blocky, it's too harsh. Yannick Paquette's art is very flowy, it's very fluid, and that is really the only kind of minus part, which is why I would almost give Animal Man Book of the Week over Swamp Thing. Because the art by Steve Pugh and I think Timothy Green III is really terrific throughout Animal Man. Steve Pugh's artwork, I mean, the grotesqueries that he creates are so vivid and they're so terrifying. And we get around then to the kind of more cartoony and blocky style of Andrew Belanger, and it just doesn't work as well. Now, I was watching Ghost Critic's review of this, and he said something that had never occurred to me to even think of something like this before. But we have almost kind of that this is an epic of almost, as he put it, kind of Lord of the Rings-esque, that we have, this gathering of heroes to fight this great evil, this almost, omnipotent, ever-seeing evil. But of course, at the end of of Animal Man, we have the reveal of why Buddy has been feeling Maxine and why Alec has been sensing Abby, is that they have been turned to the rot. That's Maxine, of course, through her actions in the previous issue, by not allowing her family to be sacrificed, she has become part of the Hunters 3, and Abby has been trisected. She has been made into these grotesqueries that Arcane was building in the last time that we saw him and her together. These small versions of herself that he was bringing to fruition. But they both know that these are no longer the people that they love so much, and they must dispatch them. And that is where the emotional core of this book, amongst all the great action and the epic quality of this of the Rot World saga, we have what we have at its core are two men searching for people that they love above just about anybody else. It's horrifically sad when Buddy has to put an end to Maxine here. And it's horrifically sad when Swampy has to fight off the Abbeys. And we're taken down by that, but then we are reinvigorated again, despite the fact that Buddy feels that there's nothing left to fight for. We even have kind of almost this Gandalfian entrance, the Battle of Helm's Deep, with now that, since Mark brought this up in his review, now I'm just kind of running with this idea, this kind of Gandalfian entrance of Shepard and, the other soldiers of the Red. And we have, Buddy and Alec finally working together to get the Batbot into the lower atmosphere, into the clouds, so that they can detonate the bomb within, filled with the biorestorative formula that will destroy the rot once and for all. And but to do so, he has to take whatever of the red is left in Black Orchid for someone who toes the line between red and green. And so we have sacrifice, and we have just these terrible moments, these terrifying moments of real emotion. And then we have this ending in which Anton Arcane escapes. Fuck! But then we are introduced to the Parliament Decay. Parliament of the Rot. And Alec and Buddy are ready to fight to the death against these guys, but the Parliament is like, whoa, hey, Anton Arcane, we gave him his abilities, but he has far exceeded and perverted what is part of essentially the cycle of life, as explored a long time ago in Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run. the idea of these three forces of animal, plant, and decay and death being this circle of life. And I'm not going to start singing Hakuna Matata, but that how vital all of these things are to the process of living beings, that all of these things must happen. That even we as humans have a connection to the green, we also have a connection to the red, and eventually there is death and decay, and we can't avoid it. But the Parliament of Decay never intended for Anton Arcane to become so powerful, but there was nothing after a certain point that they could do to stop him, to curb his insatiable hatred, to curb his insatiable greed, the essence of his monstrosity and his just evilness, if you will. His absolute evil. And so we have this final moment which both Alec and Buddy jump into this rift in which they can follow Anton Arcane. So we don't quite have the finale to the story of Rot World, but we have the finale to Rot World. Rot World is over. It's done. A strange part of me wants this world to still exist, wants it to still go on, but it can't. It can't sustain itself for really much longer than how Lemire and Snyder have worked with this book. But like I said, this strange part of me wants to see how we got here, wants to see more of the history of Rot World, and wants to see where these heroes and villains are now and what their place in this world would be like. Now, obviously, as we kind of knew from the beginning, that this was going to end up with a travel back in time to stop these things before they ever started. So maybe that is indeed where they're going. Maybe they're not going just after Arcane, but they're going back to the past, back to the present, if you will. And it is, and maybe they will stop Anton Arcane before Rot World ever begins. That is where I see this going. To be quite honest, I do have to count this as one book, and this one book gets an absolute 5 out of 5. Although, like I said, if I had to judge them on individual merits, Animal Man would be Book of the Week, and Swamp Thing would be a 4.5 out of 5 because of Andrew Belanger's art. But otherwise, Snyder and Lemire, I want them to work together like forever, because this has been a really epic book. And I know that sadly that Snyder is leaving this book soon. Lemire, as far as I know, is staying on Animal Man, even though he seems to be doing like 20 other books at this point in time. He's becoming the new Jeff Johns. And speaking of Jeff Johns, yes, today he apparently did announce, surprisingly, like the Pope, maybe it's all tied together, who knows, maybe it's an Illuminati thing. The Pope has stepped down, and also Jeff Johns has stepped down from writing Green Lantern. So after his, 6 odd years that he's been on that title, he is stepping down. I don't know who's going to be making way for. I know that Jeff Lemire is going to be co-writing one of the Justice League series. I think it's going to be Justice League of America, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe just Justice League. I don't know. I don't really want to be pulled into either of those books, though. I don't know. Maybe Jeff Johns wants to focus more on his upcoming Vibe title. Yay. And of course, we had, another slew of cancellations. I know it's over 2 hours. Stick with me for a little bit longer here. We had a slew of cancellations, Sword of Sorcery, Savage Hawkman, Deathstroke, kind of all of the leftover Liefeld books are all being shot aside. Ravagers, Team 7. I don't know why anybody thought that those books would have anything more than kind of a limited shelf life. And there's another book that I'm forgetting, but I don't care because it wasn't something I was reading. Obviously, the only one that is, of course, being canceled that I do give a shit about, of course, is Vampire. But then we have these 2 new books that are going to be coming in as part of the next wave, and whatever other books are going. This is paving the way for these cancellations. We have one of them being The Green Team, which is a very, very obscure book from, I think, like the 50s or 60s, kind of like from the Silver Age era, of a bunch of young trillionaires, Richie Rich types, but they look to invest in metahumans. Now, whether or not these will be more heroic, more villainous, or more anti-hero kind of characters, just when I saw the solicit for the first issue, I was thinking to myself, yeah, this sounds like it could be interesting, but again, I can't remember who's doing the writing, but it wasn't something that terribly excited me. But the book that is exciting me is a book called The Movement, which will be written by Gail Simone. And that will be about, if we're going to have a book about the 1% in the Green Team, they kind of, they said they didn't plan it this way, but it certainly seems like they kind of did, that they'll have basically a 99%er book in Gail Simone's The Movement. That is something I am really looking forward to. So that is it. Okay, so I know we've run a long time. It's fucking 4 o'clock in the morning. I've got to make lunch and go to bed, and fuck. I was hoping I was going to have more time, but there were so many books to talk about. So that's it for tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking it out. I know this is epic quality as far as the running time on this is concerned. I was thinking about splitting this up into 2 nights, but I said, fuck it, I'm on a roll, let's go. So thank you so much for watching. Again, as always, you guys are my, I'm your biggest fans. Those of you who come out, you make me feel alive and young again. So as always, keep coming back for a little bit more. Hopefully next week won't run this long, because although there are, again, another pretty decent amount of books that are coming out this week that I'm going to want to pick up. So we'll see how it all turns out. So thank you again so much for watching. Subscribe, thumb it up, thumb it down. Comments. Come on, people. Comments. I love them. I need them. They're my life's blood. It's what keeps me going here. Lets me know that you people are out there watching, enjoying, agreeing, disagreeing, telling me what you're feeling, what you're thinking. That's what I want to know. That's what it's all about. Again, congratulations to Ghost Critic on your 300th video. That's pretty fucking impressive, man. But I'm gone. I'm history. I'm Casper. I'm a ghost. I'm gone tonight. This has been James Donnelly. You've been in the Shadow Gallery. You've been watching New Comics, bitches! So, thank you again for watching. And, of course, as a final reminder, always remember to stay in the shadows.